Good evening. I would like to call to order the work session for December 16th, 2025 at 6:30 PM here in the Assembly Chambers. We will start off with citizens' comments. For those who wish to call in, the local number is 907-486-3231. Toll-free is 1-855-492-9202. Please turn off your radio or any listening device to prevent feedback. For those in the room who wish to speak under citizens' comments, please come to the podium and sign in. Turn on the microphone, make sure the green light's on before speaking, and speak directly into the mic. State your name for the record, address all remarks to the assembly as a body and not to any member thereof. If anyone wishes to make comment, come on up.
We're now answering a call from the queue.
Good evening, Assembly meeting. Please state your name for the record.
Brenda Schwantes.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, great. Yes, I would like to address the Borough Assembly on two issues this evening. One are the vehicle tax discussion, or any increase in taxes. I do not support, and I would urge the Assembly to look at other ways of increasing the revenue rather than taxation. Secondly, the attestation voter, removing that requirement, I'm not positive, but I am pretty sure that there is an active working post office in each of the surrounding communities. So I do support keeping the witness signature line on the ballots. Other than that, thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
My name's Judy Kidder. I'm here to talk about a couple of things. Number one, trying to get onto the borough's online record system. It's still not working. It just says that you can't get on. And I've been trying for months. Second, motor vehicle registration tax. In 2009, it was FY 2009-16, where it was increased, for example, for an 8-year-old vehicle from $30 to $140. For a new vehicle, it was $140 and it's now $300. The registration for the state, fee for the state is $100. Just on an 8-year-old vehicle, which most of the low-income people in this community that do have a car have, that's 140% difference between the fee and, what we were paying. Paying it for junk vehicles is fine. I got no problem with that. But and I know you allocate it every year in the budget cycle, and it was to go to pay bond debt, the shortfall on the bond debt from the state. But the state came and reimbursed some of that. I think that the fee at the time was excessive, and I think that you need to look at it. With the state legislation, you guys have to let them know by the 1st of January in writing to revise that downwards. Otherwise, and if you do manage to do that, it takes effect on the 1st of January 2027. If you do not get it done by December 31st and notify the state by the 1st of January, the earliest we can have relief from this is 2028. I've brought it up numerous times, and for some reason it just keeps getting missed each year to be addressed. So I'm happy that you guys are looking at it. There's a disparity. It's an inequitable tax the way it's laid out. We're already being taxed on our property taxes for the bond debt as, part of the mill rate. And then in addition, this is being assigned to pay more bond debt, and it's only those that have vehicles that are being asked to pay extra. So it's very inequitable for a lot of people in this town. And I know a lot of low-income families are struggling with the cost of this. There's a big difference between $30 and $140 on an older car, and the fee went from $140 to $300 on the newer cars. And, it's scaled down over those 8 years. I looked it all up, and the motor vehicle registration tax is not considered an ad valorem tax. So different rules apply to that. So please look at it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
On January 9th. So we're asking for some volunteers from the Assembly to make phone calls to the seniors or disabled vets that have not returned their application so that they can, as a reminder, to do that. So if you guys could, on January 9th, let me know if you can do it. I will be here Thursday, too, to ask again. Thank you.
Thank you, Seema. Do we have any other callers on the line? No? Anyone else wish to come up and make public comment?
Good evening. My name is Melissa Schoenweather, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Kodiak Economic Development Corporation. KEDC's work is focused on supporting the borough's priorities around housing, infrastructure, and long-term economic stability, particularly where coordination and sustained follow-through are needed. Over the past year, KEDC partnered with the University of Alaska Center for Economic Development to lead the creation of the Kodiak Housing Action Plan, or HAP. This work was grounded in village visits, public meetings, surveys, and direct engagement across the island. The HAP identifies clear year one priorities and emphasizes early wins and foundational capacity. These include organizing and facilitating the Housing Steering Committee, supporting designation of a housing coordinator, and advancing near-term policy actions such as short-term rental revenue tools, ADU improvements, and housing investment framework. Many of these priorities align closely with the discussions that you are having tonight around tourism revenue, infrastructure, and responsible growth. One example is the voluntary collection agreement outlined in our HAP, which demonstrates how improved short-term rental compliance can create a locally generated funding stream that supports both housing and infrastructure needs. KEDC's role is to convene partners, organize work, and help move housing initiatives from planning to coordinated action. The Housing Steering Committee is now structured and scheduled with monthly meetings set for the first half of 2026 and a clear focus on implementation. In the coming months, this work will include developing housing investment tools such as a housing trust fund, a pre-development investment fund, facilitation structured around conversations with major employers around workforce housing opportunities, and identifying potential pilot housing programs and projects that can be shaped into city or borough proposals. As the borough continues advancing housing and infrastructure priorities, KEDC can serve as a capacity partner, helping maintain momentum between policy decisions, support coordination across agencies and employers, and provide clear, transparent progress reporting. KEDC would welcome the opportunity to return for a work session or present to you a walkthrough of the HAP priorities, Housing Steering Committee work, and how this effort supports housing solutions across the borough, including our villages. Thank you all.
Thank you for your comment.
Is this on? No? Yes? Can you guys hear me? My name's Mary Forbes. I read the paper today and saw the article about the pool, and I'm here to express my support for doing whatever we need to do as soon as possible to keep the pool from further problems and anything that's going to cause structural damage. I read the article because I'm a lifelong swimmer. I buy an annual pass. I'm there 2 or 3 times a week. And so that article was very important to me. But then I turned to the last page of the paper, and it has the big article about the Kingfisher swim meet that was on the weekend. I raised 3 kids here. All 3 of them were swimmers. And it's not about us, but the pool is a huge asset to our community. And I just strongly encourage you to do whatever we need to do to keep the pool in our town for everybody who uses it and for everybody that should use it. And I did want to say just one thing, that the older I get, the better the pool feels, and you should all try it if you don't already swim. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Do you have any callers, Nova? No? All right. Anyone else wish to come make a comment? Thank you for everyone who made comments. We're going to move on to item 2, agenda items. The first item on our agenda is the community pool survey update. Madam Manager.
Good evening, Mr. DPO and Assembly members. After several attempts at spot repairs of the community pool, staff in collaboration with the Kodiak Island Borough School District Maintenance has a recommended next step for the pool. Project Manager Cody Allen is here to walk you through the events that have led us up to this recommendation.
That pin does not want to stay up here. My apologies. So we have a quick slideshow and some key points. It was a rather lengthy report. Sorry that it came at such short notice, but our architect was going to provide a presentation and he's unable to be here, so I'm going to fill in. Essentially, the community importance, as you heard tonight, it's a well-used asset within the community. It supports the high school and the swim team. There's also a year-round recreational hub for us within the community itself. Quick facts, it was completed in 2009. It's a 25-yard pool, 6-lane competition pool with shallow learn to swim in a toddler area. The reason that the distance is important is a liner was one option that was looked at. By reducing the overall length of the pool, we would then not be able to be considered a competition pool. I put the reference at the bottom of these for everybody for the report, and you should have these in your packets just in case you want to go back and forth at a later date. The historical timeline, which is pretty important, is 09 the construction was completed, and then we didn't have our first overhaul repair until 2017. That was before my time at the borough. It appears that essentially one of the key takeaways from the architectural report is that their waterproof membrane for the tile grouting system itself was a MAPE product. It failed at some point, and the water is now being able to permeate through the tile, through the concrete, into the rebar itself. And so they initially identified it in the pool vessel 2017. We had the 2023 evaluation for the deck issues. The school district did a great job in 2023 replacing a lot of the decking that had failed. They did identify that the membrane was an issue. The grout essentially has failed throughout the tile assembly. It's penny tile and needs to ultimately all be replaced for a long-term solution. The most recent work that we were directed by the assembly was to go back and get a condition assessment, which we did in 2025. In the meantime, the school district did maintain the deck, the diving board, and then they replaced a lot of the HVAC and air handling components that were associated with the identified repairs. My clicker's not clicking. So while we're here, so we have the reoccurring worsening failures within the tile system itself. Essentially, any area that becomes wet, the tile becomes loose, the tile spalls, the tile raises up off the deck. The drains throughout the pool are corroded and starting to open up. They were ductile iron piping specified for whatever reason. The pool is saltwater. Those two things don't mix very well. And so essentially the drains are corroding away and becoming an issue where drain will not allow it to flow. So the team that was involved in this was Jensen Yerborough Wall, who's our architect, our term architect, Water Technologies, who's the aquatic systems specialist, P&D, who's the structural engineer, and RSA, who's the mechanical and electrical engineer. This was more of a holistic approach. And so they began with the aquatic vessel findings. Those predominantly added some photos here. You'll see what they're calling burning or flashing, where the rebar is actually too close potentially to the concrete face, and that waterproof membrane has failed, allowing the salt water to infiltrate and touch the rebar, causing the corrosion that you see. Some of the spot repairs that were done previously identified these key issues. However, now it's determined that we have a larger issue that spot repairs would not be adequate. And so we also have some identified areas here, the pipe hangers, the flow meter position, and the missing variable frequency drive on the pump. Those are the key things that I found in the report that seem to be the highest hit items that were causing some of the mechanical issues. The structural findings were the rebar corrosion in the pool walls and the gutters. There was no risk of structural collapse or structural failure per the structural engineer. The composite of the floor decking had corrosion. You see some pretty wild cracking in the concrete, but they still were not that concerned about it. And the everescence that you're seeing with the salt coming through the concrete is from, this is the back side of the pool, inside the chase, with the water on the direct opposite side. And so that's what you're looking at in that photo. The architectural findings were actually pretty good. Essentially is just the lack of waterproofing membrane for the pool itself in the original assembly, and then some normal stuff that we experience in Alaska, especially given the proximity that we are to saltwater and the winds and weather that we have. It's door walls, our door hardware, exterior walls, and then of course roofing seams. And so we have some patches that need to be replaced that are identified, and we're working on getting that taken care of. Now the mechanical findings, those were a little bit more extreme. You see an example of that piping in the lower right hand corner. That's a sanitary drain, that's a ductile iron pipe that has a complete crack that has essentially the salt has corroded it from the inside out and caused it to where it's open to the atmosphere. And then we did have some non-code compliant heat exchangers and things that are in need of being replaced. And the building control system, much like a lot of our building controls, which we'll be talking about later in this meeting, are obsolete and need for updating. The electrical findings, they were actually pretty good as well. It was limited to like 3 different things. One was pool specific for the swim team, which was the timing system. The other stuff was like 1 emergency exit sign, recommendation for LED lightings, and a humidity sensor. So the risk and impacts are probably the most important part of the discussion for tonight. And the staff, again, we're just coming to the assembly for direction on if we want to do a small scale project to get a better idea of what the overall impacts are to the structure, or if we want to just look at a total replacement. I'll defer to you all in that direction. But essentially, if we defer the risks by category structural, we're going to look at like in a later, we're going to have a big expensive replacement project where we start to have structural failure if the rebar does not get taken care of. We're going to have big issues no matter what we do with operations, because when you shut down the pool, we have to drain the pool. We have to then make sure the pool's ballast so the pool doesn't rise up out of the ground, because we do have a water table that's rather high. We have safety concerns right now from the staff and the school district itself because it's uneven decking. The drains are raised up. They're putting like little traffic cones on top of them so kids and people don't trip inadvertently falling and hurting themselves. And the potential when the tile does crack, we have sharp surfaces. And of course the risks, the financial risk, deferred failures, we're continuously creating a larger and larger project the longer we wait. So one thing the architect did point out was that we currently do have some ADA access, but there are some improvements. And anytime you do a major change for something that was constructed way back in the way back, which doesn't seem like that long ago, you have to meet new codes, and codes change quite frequently. So there will be some drain compliance for the tile for ADA, and then exterior ADA upgrades as well. So the options under consideration essentially are just that. We have the option A, which is a targeted test repair for approximately 200 square foot, which is in the lifeguard room. That's the office adjacent to the main front entry. We think that that would be the best place given the grid lines for the facility. That's right above the mechanical space on the floating deck, and that's right behind the corridor where you've seen all the cracking in the concrete. And so we would demo out all the tile in that space, and then essentially it would validate our concerns if there's major structural issues within the pan decking, or if that rebar is not accessible, we would be able to find out in that close proximity without draining the pool or impacting the staff more than we needed to. I do not have a cost for that. That is what our world would refer to as destructive testing. And you would most likely have to be solicited for like a time and materials, because we would essentially have to have a contractor come in, demo it out, stop the work, demobilize, have the architectural engineering teams come in, do the investigative analysis they must do, remobilize, address the repair after the design is made, and then install the new tile. And then second option, more costly, is the full wet area repair program, which is going to be like the major, we're talking full demolition, everything inside the pool, take all that out. It's going to be closed down for a long period of time. But it's a major cost. But the risk is once we cut it open, we don't know really how bad it is until you get there. And then option C is kind of what we've been doing, is patch as it fails. And so they're just, the school district, with the help of the borough, has been addressing patch repairs as they come up, with the hope of like eventually getting caught up. But as we're finding, it's kind of like you pick at it and then suddenly you're chasing it perpetually throughout the facility. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Any questions for Cody or comments? Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you, Cody. I think we all probably knew what we were expecting to see tonight. Discouraging, but not unexpected. I did read over the report. You'll have to forgive me. I did not fully digest it. Is there a discussion? I didn't recall seeing a recommendation as to whether or not we maintain the salt system or switch to a more traditional chlorine system that might help with some of these corrosion issues.
So that wasn't specifically addressed to my recollection in the report. There was a topic of discussion on previous meetings. The Water Technologies Incorporated can do it either way, essentially. The main issue is like we're kind of re-baselining the pool, if you think of it that way. The intent with this was to figure out kind of what the problem is, as you're aware. However, once we figure out, we still haven't figured out the root cause. And so once we figure that out, the decision was going to be made what would be the best path forward. But we still have to try to slip line pipe and figure out if we can even repurpose some of that old infrastructure.
Great. Can I follow up? See, I think just like I would say from my perspective, anytime you do this type of repair, you're looking at a big gamble. We do a small area and find out that we've got to do the whole area, and we just kick the can down the road for a year or more, or we commit to the whole thing, and then that ends up presenting problems that we didn't anticipate. So there's risks and arguments to be made, I think, for any route we would take. I think relying on your recommendation as our project management specialist is going to be very important for me. Strategically, one thing I would throw out to my fellow assembly members is I would point us back to the conversation we had with our state senator and representative. Not expecting a state capital budget this year, but the state is retiring a lot of bond debt, and they do believe, and I've heard it from more than just them, that there's a pretty good chance this might be a general obligation bond year for the state. So if this is a project that we're going to need anyway, we may want to take that into consideration, that there could be some general obligation bond money available to help offset the cost of this. Obviously, the risk with that is if it doesn't come through, we're on the hook for a project. As we said, there's risks and challenges associated with any route we take, but just want to put that out there for everyone else's consideration, that it's at least an option.
Mr. Gardner.
Not really a question for you, Cody. Just something, when I was reading this report the other day, I noticed in one section that the inspector had stated that there was a possibility that a waterproof membrane that was supposed to be used in the original plans had not been used, at least in some areas, and that was a possible cause of this deterioration. And I couldn't help but wonder if we had any sort of legal recourse for the plans not being followed in the first place, as per the original engineering of this. So, yes.
Yeah, so we actually investigated that with our team. That was part of this approach too, and with our previous attorney. We're now with a new attorney, so we'd have to restart those conversations. However, and the short and simple answer is, because it wasn't addressed in the timely manner during the project, and we don't have definitive proof that it wasn't installed, we show photos. There's quite a few things that happened on this. Essentially, the submittal process, when the contracting firm, and pardon me if I'm over explaining this, I'm guilty of that a lot, but the contracting firm essentially issues like a record of submittal for a product that they're going to use, and then as a project manager, I was not involved with this project, you then take it to the engineering team for approval, and that gets formalized in a record. None of the submittals that we have match the specifications that were laid out on the project, and so it's kind of an internal issue with that, and so it was recommended that we don't go down that approach because we don't have a leg to stand on. And we do have photos of it being installed in some locations, but again, without destroying the pool, we have no way of definitively knowing if it's not in those areas that are flashing off. Does that make sense? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Smiley.
I presume that the small pilot project is to find out exactly what's wrong and to try to get a better handle on what the cost is going to be. One of the issues I had remembered was that we had originally ordered epoxy-coated rebar, and we didn't get that. We just got naked rebar. And then there's issues with the membrane as well. Are we going to have to do a lot of jackhammering in the pilot project?
So in the pilot project itself, it's more of like destructive testing. Think of it if you had like a leak in your house, but you didn't really know the extent, but the wall was wet. So you're going to chase it back to the dry wall and figure out what the root cause of your leak is. That's the sort of what we're doing, is like we're going to be demoing out the area to figure out the extent of the cracking that's occurring underneath the tile, and then validating that the membrane is under the tile. And then looking at like the drains that are lifting up, we're really, the structural component isn't as, the structural engineer wasn't as concerned with the rebar itself. We did do a leak test on the pool, so the pool isn't leaking. So we know like no water's leaving except through evaporation. I've only ever dealt with one other pool in Oregon that did leak, and we knew it was leaking. So this is kind of, it's odd that there's all these things that are happening that resemble water infiltration, but we're not physically seeing the water leave the pool, so we're not sure where it's coming from. And so the idea is you'll address like your drains to see if maybe those drains are leaking under the concrete, and it's just following that chase back. See if that pan decking that's corroding in some of those photos, not included in the slideshow, but in the packet, if that pan decking that's holding the concrete up that's pretty excessively corroded around the drains, see if that's actually a structural concern or if it's just residual salt from the saltwater pool. And so think of it more or less as an investigation project than really a repair. And that's why I put it as like it will be a permanent repair. It's a sound investment. It's just a test to see what's really going on without picking at the stuff that's underwater.
And about how long will this test take?
So that is a great question, and it's a difficult one to answer. The demo sounds like it's relatively quick, matter of a few days. It's the architectural and engineering teams getting all those folks together to really look at it and determine It's really hard to have somebody put their credentials on the line for something if they weren't involved in the original construction. And it's very difficult to get somebody that was involved in the original construction to come back and say they did something wrong. So that is kind of where we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And so we're just wanting to make sure we don't give you and the community as a whole misinformation.
Thank you.
Madam Manager.
Thank you. For the destructive testing, Cody, does the pool get to stay open?
So from what I understand, the pool that area is selected specifically because the pool could stay open. It is going to be a huge inconvenience to the lifeguards, but that was the objective of staying out of the vessel.
Yes. So, sorry, I knew the answer, but I wanted to talk about that because that's the one option where we don't disrupt the pool operation while we figure out what's going on versus, as Mr. Johnson said, if we do go for full, we're probably talking a year of no pool. So I think it's safe to say that we would easily miss at least one swim season completely from head to start, or head to toe. So this would allow us to find out what's going on without a major disruption to that asset for right now.
I think that's where I'm at with this is if it's a destructive testing, we'll kind of keep folks active in the pool while we figure out what's going on, and it's going to be a permanent fix when it's done, and we'll have a much better idea of the fiscal note attached to what a complete repair is going to look like. It sounds like that makes sense to me. Now, acknowledging the time sensitivity, if we were to look at bond issuance, I still think this would be a reasonable iterative approach with hopefully a relatively short timeline to get this done. But is it seeming like folks are comfortable with pursuing the testing phase first? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Allen. Madam Manager, do you need anything else from us?
I just need 4 more head nods, and I got that. So our plan will be to move forward with the option of the destructive testing.
Right.
And then we should also take a look and see what the state is going to be doing with bonds. And we should, because we're adding that extra time in, that should give us a little extra time for the state to figure out what they're doing.
Okay. Mr. Johnson.
Great, and I think that's a great route to go. The one thing I would caution my fellow assembly members on, and just because it was you hear things once in a while and they stick with you for a very long time. I was at a conference for school board members a few years ago, and the kids from, I believe it was Sandpoint, were high school kids just about in tears. Their pool had been closed temporarily, and here we were 8 years later, and no progress or any inclination of progress towards getting it reopened. I could also point to a local example. In 2011, some chain link fences were put around sections of Oscar's Dock as a temporary closure. You can go down to Oscar's Dock, those chain link fences are still there. Temporary closures tend to result in permanent closures. So my strongest hope is that as a group, we recognize that and commit to having a plan in place to keep this pool open, or when it does close, with a project already going to reopen it as soon as possible. Because it's very hard to turn the switch back on once it's been turned off. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item. The second item on our agenda is assembly review of the state and federal CIP lists. Madam Manager.
Thank you, Mr. DPO. Each year, the Planning and Zoning Commission passes a resolution that recommends to the Assembly a list of capital improvement projects within the borough. The Assembly reviews the resolution and then discusses which capital improvement projects should be submitted to the state and federal government representatives for consideration of legislative grant and/or program funding. The selected projects are listed within a resolution for formal documentation. In your packet tonight, you have first the Planning and Zoning Commission approved list that they approved in Planning and Zoning Resolution Fiscal Year 2602. And then you have KIB's Fiscal Year 2025 State CIP list, and then our 2025 Federal CIP list. Also, and I printed it and placed it in front of you because I didn't get it until last Friday, but if you're listening online, it is located in the link under supplemental materials. We have a draft of the fiscal year 26 and 27 federal list as suggested by our federal lobbyist, Sebastian O'Kelly. I printed that out in case anyone needed to reference it. So the goal at the end of the night is to talk about the items that are in there, and then if the assembly wants to try to make some kind of priority list or give us an idea, we will write a resolution and then bring it back to the assembly for approval. We've had both members of our state delegation in and asked them what is the best plan, like what do we include, and the school district has their own separate CIP list, so we don't usually put school projects on our list. Previously, we have tried to include projects from all the villages, and then we usually do something from the city. St. Herman Harbor has landed number one on all of our lists for years, even if that isn't our exact problem, but it is. So we kind of inherit that as our own, so that when we do go lobby, St. Herman Harbor is one of the things that we talk about first all the time. So last year, he isn't here, but Assembly Member Sherritt kind of gave us a guideline, and he wanted to do health and safety issues first when we were prioritizing, and then the Assembly kind of rated stuff from there. But it's totally up to the Assembly on what you think is priority for the next year. I think we've already talked about it, but the chances of getting funding from the state for any of these is probably not very strong this year, but it is still a process that we do. Once we pass the resolution, we have a system called CAPSIS that we go in and we enter all of the projects into. So Representative Stutz and Senator Stevens can go there and see what our lists are. And they also, each of the villages has their own CAPSIS identifier, so they can go add all of their projects as well. I was originally worried that if we did their projects and they did their projects, there would just be this big overlap and it would be messy. But I've been assured that our representative and our senator know us so well that they know to separate things out, or if there's dual entries. So that was a lot of talking.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Before I open this up for discussion, just wanted to remind the Assembly, it is, I believe, a plan to meet with the city again for a joint work session to discuss combining our CIP lists. So keep that in mind when we discuss how we want to prioritize. All right, I will open it up for discussion. Mr. Johnson.
I'll just be very brief. I happen to have a little of inside insight on number 10, the St. Herman Harbor infrastructure, and I think Planning and Zoning was looking at a phasing proposal, and they combined the two proposals. So that's not quite an accurate number. The total project cost is high-end estimate is $99 million, and phase 2 cost is about 66. So I think we could clean that up to be more reflective of what the actual project cost is going to be.
Okay, Ms. Roberts.
Are these in any particular order already? Okay.
Thank you. I agree with a previous comment that, the governor released his draft budget, very clearly states that there's little to no revenue available for capital expenditures. That said, it never hurts to ask, but thinking about our federal lists, I do think our historical approach has been a little, I guess, disjointed and not aligning with expectations as far as funding, the reality of funding availability. I floated the idea recently to perhaps choose one, maybe two of the big ticket items, which clearly in our case is always going to be the harbor. We need substantial amount of funding for the harbor, but also maybe selecting 2 or 3 smaller projects that have $500,000 or less, or even smaller than that, a much smaller fiscal note, that if someone's looking at it and they say, okay, we can't help with these 10 things, but they have this one item on their list, they're only asking for $300,000, whatever it is, it's a much smaller amount. So I do think we should maybe pick a couple of smaller projects that might be more readily accessible to limited funding. So that was just an idea I was floating around fairly recently, but Madam Manager.
Thank you. I answered incorrectly. For the planning and zoning one, they do say it's in a priority order. From where the borough passes resolution, it usually doesn't say that. In our last year resolution, it says capital improvement projects unranked. We specifically put that in there. But in the planning and zoning one, it does say that they're ranked.
Yeah, Madam Manager, regarding item 10, the St. Herman Harbor Infrastructure Replacement estimated project costs, do you need anything else from us to maybe tease out what the more accurate figures would be?
I wrote a note to myself to contact the harbor master and ask him for updated numbers.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I also, this list is done kind of early, and I think that the world has evolved a little bit. And so when I look at the list and I look at what planning and zoning gave us, for number 12 with KCHC expansion, and those costs, they're not planning on that big of an expansion. They do have a couple of different plans, one with one floor and one with 2 floors, but they have that, as it lists there, that $8 million that they've acquired, but they haven't gotten any more money, and they're currently working on design. So I think that one, if we were going to include that one in our list, we could update the way that that's worded as well, because those plans have changed since this was approved.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion? All right. Okay, the third item on our agenda is the vehicle registration tax discussion. Madam Manager.
1 second. So, sorry, before we move on, is there a date that you'd like to come back and look at these? Do you want to approve these as they're submitted? Do you want to talk about the federal CIP list at all? That's usually done by our federal lobbyists. That is something that we do joint with the city. The city and the borough federal lists are the same every year. This is earlier than we usually do this because last year we were really late. And so is this something that you'd like to come back and talk about in January and approve officially in a resolution? Do you have any kind of guidance on what you want to do for priorities? I know that sounds a lot like I'm asking for a strategic plan, but I've worded it so it says, what are your priorities? So, but that would, I can just give it to you with all 17 in there and then you can pick and choose, or do you want to go for a few small items and a few larger, you can let me decide, but I don't think that's representative of the elected. So, and we can talk about it more in a work session in January too, if you just need more time to think about it, because this is a lot. So I accept that too.
No, that's a great question. Dr. Smiley.
I'm for talking about it in January.
Perfect. We'll pick a date at the next agenda setting. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Gardner.
I was just going to say that I'm pretty happy with this list as it goes. The only one that I really got questions that I couldn't quite get answered before today was some stuff on KCHC, and I'm not sure how I feel about that one, but the order on what you gave us is pretty good to me. But yeah, I'd like to think about this for a little bit longer as well.
Hey, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Yeah, I think another discussion in a work session is a great idea. If at all possible, if we could get a joint work session before we vote on it, that would be great. I understand that can be difficult to arrange sometimes, but when we had Gary and Louise talking to us, they were pretty clear that a matched list is going to be better. So if we could meet with the city council and try to come to some kind of agreement on that, I think it would help our community.
Hey, Ms. Roberts.
I think we had agreed to meet in February, early February with the city. Is that what the general date was? Does anyone remember? I think it was within the first 2 weeks of February.
Madam Clerk, do you remember when our next joint tentative joint work session is with the city?
It's on the 3rd. Of February? Okay. Yeah, I think having it in another work session with the assembly before that joint meeting would be beneficial.
I have no way of asking to be recognized, so I'm just going to say it.
Mr. Woods, pardon me. Please go ahead.
It's all good. I would just like to echo Mr. Johnson and Miss I'm sorry, I'm totally out of it at the moment. But yeah, I would like to go through another work session prior to us making a final decision on a list of priorities.
Thank you. I will look up at the screen more often. I apologize.
Okay, now I'm happy. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All right, thank you for that. So back to the third item on our agenda is the vehicle registration tax discussion. Madam Manager.
Thank you. The Kodiak Island Borough Assembly has the option of adjusting the motor vehicle registration tax. There's a long lead time, as we heard in public comment tonight, from when decisions are made at the local level and the resulting changes reflected at the state level. Any adjustments that might be made before December 3rd, 2025 would not raise or lower this tax rate until January 1st, 2027. In your packet tonight, you'll see the MVRT monthly tax collections from fiscal year 2016 to fiscal year 2025 for your reference. I've also printed and put in front of you KAB Code 3.60. That chapter is the motor vehicle registration tax chapter. There are copies of it in the back. I think probably Ms. Kidder already has that memorized. And so you have that on that Excel spreadsheet that you have. There are some important things. You can see the current tax rates went into effect in January of 2022. That highlighted block is where you can see the amounts go up. And then I think the other important thing here is the line that says mill rate equivalent that's going across. You can see in 2016, it shows you that a mill rate equivalent of 0.21 went to education support. And you can see it was education support until we switched in 2020 went to debt service. And that's been anywhere from 0.15 mils all the way up to 0.45 mils equivalent. So our finance director is finally taking some much needed vacation, but I wanted to let you know that if we go back to those previous rates from our highest to like when it was 0.15, that's 0.3, we would have to add on the mill rate to make up for that. And so, yes, that is high. No one is going to argue about that, but it is 0.3 mils. Equivalent of money coming into the borough. So if we change that and lower that, we'll either have to decrease the budget or services or make up for that in the mill rate somewhere else.
Thank you. Assembly discussion. Mr. Smiley.
I read in the paper about, I can't remember the name they used, orphan or outmoded or something, cars that were dead and nobody could afford to take them to Nick's.
Junk vehicles.
Yeah.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we could do with this money that we attach to the registration fee is set aside a little bit of money in order to cover that vehicle going to Nick's.
We do that every year.
Good.
That's in our process. Not that I've expected you to read that code, but in that code, it does say that this money is specifically going to debt service and the junk car removal program.
Okay.
And then that amount is allocated every year. So we can change the amount allocated towards junk vehicles or not. A lot of the stuff of what you read in the paper was the city of Kodiak saying they were out of money. But the big problem where the city is having right now is they don't have an impound lot because they sold their impound lot. And so in full transparency, they asked if they could put their vehicles on borough land, and your manager said no, because I don't know that they would ever leave our land. And if there's not money for them to take them directly to Nick's, I don't know when that money will come. And then we have an environmental concern on our hands. And so, and we don't have an impound lot either. So we ticket cars, we put tags on them, we put, our code enforcement officer left us an entire book of how to take care of it, but we can't just, a car's on the side of the road, take it to Nick's. There is a process to make sure that it has truly been abandoned, and we can't identify who the owner is and charge them for the disposal. Once we have done all of that, then we can get it towed to Nick's. And that $400 is likely to go up because of the chains and buckles and all the story that I told you about, that they are making it more expensive for him to get stuff off island. So I would expect that becomes more expensive for us too.
Well, this is just one of the things that we bring to this island, and we don't want to leave it here. I mean, that's why we have a landfill as well, I presume. But we need to get rid of these things in some way, shape, or form, and it's obviously getting more expensive every time you turn around. So
yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Gardner.
Couple things. First of all, we give the junk removal program $20,000 from this annually, yes?
I do think that's how much went in there last year.
If
Yes.
I recall correct, $5,417 had been spent out of that fund as of a week ago, or somewhere very close to that number.
I'm going to take your word on that.
It's very, very close. It's
Yep,
5,000
okay.
and change. Can we, if we're not going to use it before the end of the year, can we gift some of that to the city to help them
we
get rid of some
absolutely
cars?
will use it. So, first of all, we're not even halfway through the fiscal year. So this is a fiscal year amount, and we do a program that we allow every family 1 car a year for like a free tow away. So if you're a family with 8 cars in your front yard, once a year, I recommend July when the money is fresh, you can come into the borough and ask for help with 1 car.
Yeah.
So we're trying to not only, like, we take them off of borough property when they're left there, but we also have a program where we're trying to get them out of people's yards and out of the neighborhoods as well. So that we don't usually end the year with a lot of money left, and I have given direction to ask for more money. Use it all, ask for more, because we can do budget amendments, right? So I would rather use it all and have more moved and get them out to Nick's where they belong instead of sitting around.
Then the remainder, this $712,000 debt services, that goes, I'm assuming, to the school bond debt?
Yes, and I know that everyone just thinks, man, that high school is expensive, but that is not the only school bond debt that we are paying off. We have lots of others that are combined into that total. So including the pool, we're still paying, so.
Okay. Last thing I'd say is, yeah, I'm in favor of lowering this tax a little bit, especially on the older vehicles. I kind of like Judy's thoughts there. Cars that are 10 years or older, it can be pretty rough if you've got a 80s Ford and you're just scraping by and the thing's, hardly worth what your total bill is. Registration time be a nice place to ease the burden on lower income folks. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you. I have a pretty strong opinion on this one. My understanding is this tax was levied when the state government was no longer reimbursing for school bond debt. However, that was reversed and reimbursed, and bond debt reimbursement continued from that point onward. So by continuing to levy this tax on our community, you can correct me here in just a minute, that if this was the original intent, as I understand it, I could be wrong, we are essentially still double taxing our community for school bond debt when reimbursement already was reenacted and reimbursed. So to me, that's a disingenuous double levy of taxation on our community. I do not support shifting that into another form of double taxation just because we got used to it. We got used to that revenue, and to say that we're going to, if we do remove that additional levy, that we're going to shift that into an increased mill rate, I don't support that one bit. We're still double dipping on our community. This is not the time to keep making it more expensive here. Our out-migration has not slowed down, and it's for a very clear reason. It is too expensive to live here. Madam Manager, if you have a correction for me, I would love to hear it.
I wouldn't call it a correction, Mr. DPO. What I would say is this year, the state did not pay $1.8 million of our school bond debt that they should have. So we very much still have a school bond debt problem. They did not pay it for several years, and then it was reimbursed later, but I can't make a budget over a fiscal year hoping that in 5 years the governor or new governor decides to pay it back. So we have a gap, and we're responsible for balancing the budget each year. Like my personal feelings, I just bought a new car and it hurt. It was $415 to get it registered. So yes, it's expensive. I accept that. But when we say we're double taxing, no, we're not, because we're paying school bond debt. So when you divide it into some comes from motor vehicle tax and some comes from property tax, more people are paying. People who are not homeowners are helping pay that school bond debt in ways that they would not if it was all property tax. But either way, we're paying. We're not trying to collect more than we need, but that debt gets paid every year no matter where it comes from. To say that we're double levying or we're double taxing, we're not. We're just getting it from different sources. Now, if you're a homeowner and you own cars, you're going to say, yes, I am paying more because you're paying bond debt from two sources from me, and that feels like a lot. But the reality is, if we don't have that, the mill rate does have to go up to cover it because we can't not pay that. So either you're paying from two sources or the property owners are paying it all.
Mr. DPO.
I still don't quite agree with that. I understand. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Woods, please.
Yeah, if I may. I have an issue with this tax across the board. I think it's distasteful and it rather disproportionate.
Mr. Woods, could you get a little closer to your mic, please?
Oh, sorry, my camera's not working. Is this any better? Can you hear me now?
Go ahead.
How about now? Okay, sorry. I have an issue with this tax in general. I think it disproportionately impacts the lower income members of our community. And I have a really hard time when you're looking at anywhere from a $200 to $400 registration bill for somebody who, if they're making somewhere in the mid-20s an hour, that's the difference between a grocery bill or, potentially opening themselves up to some degree of a citation. I find that distasteful. That being said, with this, I have a hard time recommending or voting in favor for anything that would reduce the amount of income coming into the borough. We're just not in a financial position to do that right now. My hope would be down the road we can find some other means of revenue that could replace this, but I think it's kind of the devil we've got with us right now.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, I'm sensitive to the argument about how this impacts our low-income community members. Couple thoughts on that, though. One of the best quotes I heard from a politician in this state was they asked an audience, what Alaska's largest export resource was. Everybody says oil, right? No, it's wealth. Thousands of people come up here every year, make a year's worth of income, and take it home with them. And none of that is captured. I do believe, if I recall correctly, I wasn't on the assembly at the time, so I'll stand by for correction, but one of the arguments in favor of this was that it is a small way to capture some of that pool of folks who do own vehicles that are left around the harbor, at the airport, and other places year-round by people who make their money here and then leave with it. So I think there's at least a point to be made in that. To the point of this affecting lower income families, yeah, I am very sensitive to that. I also recognize that I'm not interested in raising the mill rate 0.4 to offset this cost. If we, as a group, wanted to look through, have our finance director look through the numbers and find a way to shift the burden more onto vehicles that are 5 years old or newer, I would be in favor of that. I think, lowering the rate for vehicles over 5 years while increasing it for those newer than 5 years, we could make the same amount and put less of a burden on older vehicles. I'd be open to that, but yeah, I'm not interested in increasing the mill rate 0.4 to get rid of this entirely unless we have another source of revenue identified that nobody's ever thought of.
Thank you. I understand this is a nuanced scenario, but I'm still, I guess, uncomfortable with how this took place to begin with. I still feel it was disingenuous on how this all continued without this discussion happening several years ago, which it should have. I agree with previous comments. I have no desire to increase the mill rate. That's going to not only double dip homeowners, but a lot of property taxes are also for long-term rentals, which most, I would imagine, property owners who are renting out their homes are not going to just absorb that. Cost of housing continues to go up for both long-term residents who are homeowners and long-term renters who are leasing homes here in our community. So I still think we should reduce it, maybe not necessarily to the historical level before it was increased in 2022, but perhaps some sort of compromise in the middle to reduce the burden a little bit on the community is where I sit with it. Madam Manager.
Thank you. MAPTR that is on the books limits the amount of property tax that we can collect throughout the year. And so if we take this source of revenue away, and I just did the school funding window yesterday and sent it over to the superintendent, we're over $14 million for the max side of that window. And we're not allowed to collect more property tax this year than we did the year before. Right? Plus, there's a CPI adjustment and new construction adjustment, and I will walk you through my wonderful flow charts over there at some other point. But if we take that money away and we cannot collect it in property tax to make up for it, so we might not even have the option of raising the mill rate because our full determined value went up quite a bit, we're going to have to take MAPTR off the books, and so the Assembly is going to have to vote. And we're going to have to tell the public, hey, we're taking the reins off. There is no more restraint on how much we raise the mill rate. Even if you don't intend to raise the mill rate, that's a sticky point in the community. We don't know if school bond debt in the next year will be paid or not. The governor's budget right now does have it, but it had it last year too. And that's $1.8 million that we think we're getting and then we didn't get. And so that leaves very big gaps in trying to create a balanced budget for fiscal year 27. And the arguments for low income residents, that's huge. If you're paying $300, it's $150 a year. These are 2-year numbers, which is still a lot, and I don't want to belittle that, but we are nowhere compared to California or some states in the lower 48. Like, they pay that and year. Hawaii. Huh. Yeah. So, yes, it is a lot, but I'm worried by taking that money away, will be affecting fiscal year 28, right? Because half of fiscal year 27, it wouldn't take place until January of 27. So we're making decisions for the future where we don't know what kind of money we're going to get from the state. And so that just makes me nervous. And you guys can obviously choose which direction you want to go, but I think we're paying a little bit of a dangerous game taking that money away, not knowing what the school bond debt replacement is going to look like. Because if they take another $2 million away next year, where's that come from? I don't know. So,
Mr. Gardner.
I hear where you're coming from, Mrs. Manager. 700,000 and change isn't exactly like a flash in the pan, but some sort of compromise. I feel like Mr. Whiteside wants it gone all the way. I feel like I kind of do as well. Mr. Johnson's a lot more realistic. We're going to have to find some sort of way to compromise here, but there's got to be something somewhere in the budget that we can cut to shuffle around for a couple $100,000, and there's got to be somewhere we can meet in the middle on this.
I agree. It's, and I appreciate the forward-looking thought on that. However, let's say for that scenario, bond debt's fully reimbursed, and then we still collect all of this money. Are we going to then retroactively give that money back to the community? That never happens. That does not happen. We use caution to justify taxation, and then in the case of, okay, we do get funding, when have we ever, as a municipality, said, okay, we did get the funding. We got more funding than we were expecting. We are going to return some back to the community. That does not happen. We just spend more. I understand we have some fiscal cliffs we're coming up against, but at what point do we have to make the tough decision where we do start reducing services to slow out migration and give our economy the slightest chance and breathing room to recover? If we always use the excuse of we have to keep spending and we have to increase cost of living here, at what point do we run out of people? That's coming. We do have to face that intersection at some point. And that's not an easy thing for me to say, because I do understand the near-term pain that we are going through and we are going to continue to go through for the next several years, because oil is now 50 some odd dollars a barrel. This isn't going to get any better. But at some point, we have to consider reduction in services, or we're never going to bounce back. It's just that simple. Mr. Gardner?
I am squarely in your camp, Mr. Whiteside. I would like to gently remind the rest of the assembly that we would have to do something about this on Thursday if we wanted to do something about it and have it take effect by 2027.
Thank you for bringing us back on track. We have, so to, I guess, summarize options to consider for Thursday, I don't believe we have anywhere near consensus for any direction. I do believe we had a question about considering an alternative option of shifting some of that taxation based on age of vehicles. Madam Manager, I know Dora is out, so I don't imagine that's something we can look into with that short amount of time.
I don't know how long it would take, or if we could get the information from the state on if the money coming in was on a vehicle that was brand new or a vehicle that was 5 years old. Like, I'm sure they have that somewhere. I don't know how fast we could get that if you needed that in order to make a decision. I'm not sure. I mean, we can certainly try to get a hold of the state tomorrow and ask, but I just don't have any way to, I mean, because if we just said we're going to half all of these, I don't know what impact that actually has on the numbers. That's hard to gain.
Right. Yeah, we don't have a lot of time. Ms. Roberts?
The options, if we were to somehow bring it to a vote on Thursday, is the option do nothing or take it back to 2020 prices, or is there a way that we could meet in the middle somewhere? Because inflation has happened since 2020, so you have to be realistic about it. But what are the options if we were to bring it somehow to Thursday's meeting?
We don't actually have it on the agenda for Thursday's meeting, so there's nothing to vote on for Thursday. And I'm not sure that it requires a vote. I think it just requires the borough telling the state what we want to do. So it could just be a consensus item, but we just have to have that done before the end of the year if we wanted to make changes. We will not have a finance director to help us, but we have plenty of people in finance that can help us.
Madam Clerk, what options do we have, if any, to discuss this again on Thursday?
Unfortunately, we can't because of the way that we scheduled the work session and the regular meeting. Our final advertising is going out tomorrow. There's no way for us to revise the advertising for Thursday's meeting. So we can't add an item to deal with this on Thursday night. If you would like to do something before the end of the year, you can call a special meeting. And I believe I'm not sure if we need an ordinance to change this. I'm really not sure. I know that I asked staff at one point to pull the ordinance regarding this. But if it requires an ordinance, it requires 2 meetings.
Yeah, it was ordinance fiscal year 1916 that changed it. So it looks like it was done by ordinance to change it.
And ordinances takes at least 2 meetings, at least a month to adopt.
Okay, so if I'm understanding everything correctly, there's nothing we can do before the end of the calendar year that would take effect one full calendar year from now. I do appreciate the discussion. I think this is long overdue. I think there's been a lot of people in the community, I'm one of them certainly, that was not pleased with how this all took place initially. So I'm glad we're being more transparent now with information as to what could be lost if we remove this source of revenue, but also what could be gained for some people who have been voicing their concerns in paying this additional levied tax to register their vehicles. So I appreciate the discussion. Mr. Gardner?
It's my understanding that this topic has come up frequently over the years, and that this has happened more than once where we get to the end of the year and it has to be kicked back to the following year. So I think it's something a lot of people care strongly about, and we need to get it on an agenda so that we don't get consumed by all the stuff that's about to hit us and let this go by the wayside until next December and we run into the same problem.
I agree. It hasn't appeared on an agenda since, or the 2 years I've been on the Assembly, Madam Manager. Maybe you have better insight there.
I know it's been discussed, but I don't think it's been discussed in a meeting, and so that's why we wanted to put it on the agenda and have the discussion in public. But I can make a note here so we can get it on the agenda, or February or March or sometime. We'll be in budget cycle then and talking about budget stuff, so it'll be probably very well timed. And there's no excuse not to have it done if we're talking about it in March. But then that'll give us time to ask about those individual numbers so if we can see what categories that money is coming in under. And then I'm always a lot more comfortable when Dora is here to tell you the true impact of stuff. So it'll be nice to have her here.
That's great. That sounds great to me. Thank you. Mr. Woods, did you have anything else to add? Okay, thank you everyone for that. That was a great discussion. So we'll look at placing this item on an agenda in the spring prior to or concurrent with our budget discussions.
Mr. DPO, would that be a work session agenda? It's
believe so.
not going to be an ordinance for introduction?
No, not yet.
Right. Okay, February. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving to the fourth item on our agenda is the discussion of code change, amending Kodiak Island Borough Code 3.55.025 to allocate a portion of the sales tax proceeds from tourism to infrastructure development. I will take that one. I submitted this as just a discussion item. So I'm thinking about, as we're looking towards releasing land for development or for sale for folks to develop and build homes on, I'm reminded that the cost of developing infrastructure here on the island, and currently a lot of people aren't jumping at the chance to buy some currently vacant lots because it's cost prohibitive to install infrastructure, extend sewer, water, power, and then the building costs, the materials are through the roof due to inflation. So if we are going to look at releasing land for auction so folks can build homes, it'd be difficult for us to avoid the previous scenario where larger entities will buy swaths of land because they're the only ones who can afford or have the capacity to develop it. And then it's come to find some of them will, and then some of them won't. They'll just sit on it. So I know it's been, in recent discussion, the wish of the Assembly to avoid that scenario. But how can we do that in a way to where we can help folks with infrastructure development to make the cost, not just to purchase a lot, but to build a home, reduced? And so this was one idea I had. We have limited resources for what we could use to fund infrastructure development when releasing land for auction for folks to build homes. And thinking about the short-term rental discussions we've had repeatedly, I'm reminded that folks do rely on that income. Folks who own short-term rentals, I understand this is an important source of revenue for them. I understand the tourism industry, our current capacity in hotels and lodges can't keep up with the demand. So I understand and appreciate that, but the fact remains that short-term rentals do displace long-term housing in our community. Can't dispute that. There are many, many homes that are short-term rentals. And so I was trying to think about, instead of focusing my efforts on restricting the amount of short-term rentals, how can we use some of the revenue from short-term rentals to help alleviate the housing crisis? And so this was just an idea I had that came up. This short-term rentals, they generate a small amount of revenue through the bed tax. This is by code supposed to be allocated towards tourism development only. So my discussion item here is, do we look at taking some amount of that revenue and reallocate that to infrastructure development for surveys, for land lot, surveying lots before we auction them? That's going to cost money. Extending electricity, sewer, water. All this infrastructure is going to take a lot of money that we don't have. We have a little bit, but not enough. So this is one way we can reduce the amount of cost to develop this infrastructure. But I want to be clear that I have no desire to reduce the amount of funding that goes to Discover Kodiak annually. I think preserving that amount with these funds is great. It's critical to maintain our tourism industry. It's growing, it's booming. People want to come here. I don't want to disrupt that. But any funds in excess of that, I do think it'd be fully appropriate to allocate those towards infrastructure development. Because if we're not looking to restrict short-term rentals, which displace housing, maybe we can leverage that to increase the amount of housing we have. So a little bit long-winded, probably more than some folks needed for context, but that's my thought behind this discussion item. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Yeah, I signed on to that because I absolutely support it, and I would even take it a little further. I don't think I've been shy in the fact that I'm pretty hostile to tourism as an economic driver. Governments love tourism. It creates a lot of revenue with little demand for accountability, because the folks who spend the money on tourism-related taxes while they're here then go home and they don't expect anything from it. So yeah, we love tourism dollars in government. Business owners who capitalize off the tourism industry love the tourism industry. Your average community member doesn't benefit a lot from tourism. And when we displace long-term opportunity for seasonal work, it changes the community. I would argue not for the better. So yeah, I absolutely support this. I would support up to 50% of the borough's bed tax going to a housing development fund. If this goes forward for introduction, I'll introduce an amendment to add an additional 5% bed tax on short-term rentals dedicated exclusively to housing development. As was correctly identified, those are homes not being used for folks to live in. So if we capture additional revenue from those to then turn around and try to alleviate some of this housing crunch we find ourselves in, all the better. And I'll reiterate the point, because we haven't discussed it since the election, so we've got some new members, but our population's down. We all know that, about 10% in the last decade. Yet in the last 5 years, our house prices are up 40%. So I recognize and acknowledge that some of that is changing demographics, fewer kids and families, but that's not the only thing that's driving up our home prices. We as an assembly have not done anything to address that 40% increase in 5 years. I've said before, there's very few levers that a governmental body can pull to address housing. One of them is zoning and regulation. Getting a better handle on the use, again, and as was said, I want to pause there to say, I absolutely recognize and appreciate that there are people who use extra bedrooms or a floor of their house for short-term rentals, and that helps them pay their bills. I have no problem with that, and I support that. What I have a problem with are the unoccupied single-family homes being used exclusively as short-term rentals. I just happened to see today the Chillicothe Inn is for sale. If you want to be in the hotel business, buy the Chillicothe Inn. Absent that, I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of empathy for folks buying speculative real estate assets that were designed, built to a residential code as a hotel-like business because it creates unfair market competition for the folks who would want to build hotel capacity. They've got to build to a completely different code standard than a single-family home. It's a lot cheaper to build a home and rent it out as a short-term rental than it is to build a hotel. You don't have the wet sprinklers and all the other code requirements. So, yeah, I'll just say, again, I'm long-winded as well on that. Fully support it, and I would like to even see it go a little further. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smiley.
I'm a little concerned about this one. First off, I mean, there are two industries in this community, fishing and tourism. And fishing is down a little and tourism is up a little. We want to invest in tourism to the extent that it keeps a healthy system going. And I think that we need to adjust the amount we give Discover Kodiak with the CIP adjustment for that, because inflation is going to go crazy pretty soon. And we want to make sure that we're giving them sufficient funds to do their job well. On the issue of housing, and I agree about a lot of things that were said, but this isn't our problem alone. It's happening everywhere across the country. I mean, the average house price in Seattle is close to $1 million now. In Portland, it's $900,000. I mean, these are outrageous prices. And largely it's due to the fact that now it's an investment game that a lot of people and businesses are playing. It started with the home improvement kind of thing and then ballooned into just raw investment and grubby capitalism, I guess you'd call it. So I want to control this as much as possible. I have yet to see something that's effective for the short-term rental issue. I haven't seen anything from other communities that makes real sense. I don't think we want to really get into the business of telling people what they can and can't do with their property at that level. I think we have to find some way of managing it, and I just don't know what it is right now. Thank you.
Mr. Gardner, then Madam Manager.
I agree with all of you guys in different ways here. I think Mr. Smiley's on point about even increasing what we can give to Discover Kodiak. I think it'd be wise to bring Sabrina Hicks into that conversation. She's got a pretty good handle on the numbers, and she could show us, where that goes, how it gets used, and what a little bit more could do. Yeah, my only concern here is that earmarking this money for the development of infrastructure is that it's going to get absorbed somewhere in some way while we're, realistically, I think we're at least a few years out from, expanding the housing. We haven't even decided which lots we're looking at. I'm looking hard at Menasha Bay personally, but just earmarking it and saving it, I'm just worried that it'll get absorbed somewhere else while it waits years to be used. So that's my only concern.
Madam Manager?
Thank you. So as we talk about this fund, in the last couple of years, after COVID, having a balance in that fund was created an opportunity for the borough to be able to continue to fund Discover Kodiak when they weren't making their own funding, right? So we were able to continue to fund while we didn't have tax coming in. So that cushion was very useful. In the last couple of years, since NOAA has backed out of paying for the receptionist at the touch tank, we use this fund to pay for the receptionist for the touch tank. And so we've had previous discussions where we talked about how important that community asset is and how we keep that open. If we take money out of this fund, we're making it so that it's not going to be an option for us for that in the future. So we're kind of like picking community asset over community asset. If we want to be able to continue to use that fund to fund that touch tank position and have that open to the public, and we're down to Tuesdays and Thursdays now, and we're kind of struggling with that because we're short-staffed too. if we are taking money out of that fund, unless you increase the revenue coming into that fund, which changes the whole dynamic, right? But if we keep it at 5% and we are doing the funding of Discover Kodiak and the touch tank, then one of those is going to have to give. So depending on how much money comes in, which is varied every year. But I just wanted to remind you that we do use that for the KFRC to keep that open, and I think that's an important thing that we do for the community as well.
Thank you, and I agree with all points made, pro and against this as just simply a discussion item. Just trying to think of ways, how can we, I don't think we're years out from releasing land. I think it's going to come sooner than we think, very soon. We're going to start releasing lots for development, but how do we reduce the cost to build here? I mean, even if we're like, great, we're releasing land, but no one can afford to build on it, we're back where we started. At some point, we have to identify solutions to help increase housing availability. There's always going to be very reasonable arguments against doing something like this. Those will always exist. There's always going to be the opportunity cost or the fear of loss. That is real. That is very real. But at what point do we have to make a difficult decision and prioritize housing availability over, and I believe, the one who was nudging very hard for keeping that touch tank open. I certainly was one of the few that was nudging for that when it happened. However, I'm acknowledging now that we don't have any solutions to help with the housing crisis because we just keep making, not necessarily excuses, but we keep bringing up the reasons why we can't do it because we will lose this or we lose that or we'll put pressure on that. How long are we going to keep doing that? We have to identify solutions. This is one option. It's not a big one. It certainly won't generate a ton of revenue. If we were to entertain increasing the bed tax to generate more revenue, I did try that. I tried that 2 years ago. That was overwhelmingly opposed, not only by the Assembly, but by those who contribute to that tax. So I'm happy to revisit that, but when I introduced it 2 years ago, that was, I think, my first ordinance I introduced, and it was shot down. It wasn't even close. I don't even think there was one other person in support of that. So at what point are we going to make a tough decision? We have to do something. We can't just keep saying, well, if we do that, we lose this. If we do that, we lose that. So we either accept the position we're in and just say, yep, we don't have any housing in this case. Or we have to do something that's difficult and painful to spur growth in our community and get folks housing availability. But anyhow, I'm just kind of yammering on now. But it doesn't sound like we have nowhere near consensus, but I do think I am going to continue pursuing introduction to continue the discussion. Whether or not this, again, I just want this to be on the table. I'm not pushing one way or the other, but I do think it's an option we should consider. So I will continue with getting this introduced as a formal draft or a draft ordinance in the future. Any further discussion, Mr. Johnson?
Thank you. Yeah, I support that, and I think when we bring it forward in the future, we can take a look at the revenue that goes into the tourism fund, how that's allocated, and if that's the continued desire of this body, we can look at amending the amount and creating. Like I said, I would personally be in favor of an extra 5% and dedicating that exclusively to a housing development fund. The other thing I would suggest, and forgive me, Madam Clerk, because it's not quite in direct connection to this, but as you mentioned, what do we do? And I think we heard a public comment tonight about housing action plan that's being developed for our community. We know the limits, we know what's needed. I think something we haven't discussed as a body, but we could definitely reach out to some communities that have had great success with the program is the Housing Trust. If you're not familiar with that, It's an opportunity for lower middle income folks to buy a house at or near market value. But the ownership model is such that it is only allowed to appreciate a certain amount during the course of ownership so that when they sell, it remains affordable housing. So you get a cheaper house because the speculation in it is removed. You're a homeowner, but then when you sell it, like I said, it remains affordable. So I think a housing trust in this community is probably long overdue. And it's something I'd like to consider for discussion in a future work session. Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on here. The last item on the agenda for discussion is the discussion of election code change, whether to allow removal of attestation on by mail voted ballots. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer and members of the Assembly. I really do not have a recommendation. It's really up to the Assembly. We do mail out ballots to the villages and in Kodiak, and also we do absentee by mail ballots. And our envelopes are running out, or they pretty much ran out the past year, this past election, and we need to order new ones. But before we order new ones, I thought that I should check with you whether there is an interest to remove the attestation part on the envelope. This past election, we rejected only 4. And then we did our research, and Juneau and Anchorage, they only do by mail voting. They don't do in-person voting. Everything is done by mail. They do not require attestation on their envelopes. However, I did a survey today with my fellow clerks, and they came back with these responses that's on green paper before you, and all of them, except for the 2 that I mentioned, require attestations on their envelopes. So I'm just throwing it out there for your consideration on how you feel about removing it, or whether you'd like to keep it, and then we'll order our envelopes without changing the code if that's the decision that you'd like to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Nova. Mr. Smiley.
We live in a world where elections are debated and hammered up and down all over the media. And I think removal of the attestation gives people the idea that we're not looking closely at things. I don't really understand why Anchorage and Juneau do it this way. It seems like everybody else requires the attestation. I don't mind it one little bit. Thank you.
Mr. Gardner?
Does one option or the other save any money at all? I know it's probably peanuts, but
No.
yeah, I have no preference.
Okay, Ms. Roberts?
I could see removing a barrier for some people, possibly, maybe those 4 people, but I don't see it being that big of a barrier to remove it, to keep the validity of their ballot in the mail.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I mean, we don't seemingly have a big voter fraud problem here in our little community. That's the purpose that serves, is to prevent voter fraud. But our voter turnout's also horrid. 4 votes. We actually, have witnessed elections in the past few years that were won by 2 votes, I believe. The city mayor was won by 2 votes. So 4 votes, could make a difference, but I'm indifferent on this one. I don't know how I feel about it. I could be swayed one way or another, to be honest.
Okay. It looks like we're keeping it the status quo. Okay,
Does
thank
that
you.
sound reasonable? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, moving on to packet review. The first will be a public hearing for ordinance number FY 2026-13, accepting and appropriating funds from the 2020 Alaska Pacific Cod Federal Fishery Disaster Relief Distribution. Staff report, Madam Manager.
Thank you. When a federal fishery disaster is declared, direct federal financial assistance may be provided to fishing communities in the form of grants, direct payments, cooperative agreements, loans, or contracts to help offset economic loss associated with the events that led to the declared disaster. The 2020 Alaska Pacific cod disaster was caused by warmer than average ocean temperatures, which led to a decline in Pacific cod biomass and a reduced fishery. As a result of this event, KIB was affected by the loss of fishery tax revenue. I received notification from the Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission that the Kodiak Island Borough is eligible for a one-time payment of $156,158.40 for the 2020 Alaska Pacific cod federal fishery disaster. The fiscal impact to the borough will be an increase to the Fisheries Economic Development Fund. And just as a reminder, when we get money like this from anyone and it doesn't have a specific purpose, we accept it by ordinance. And that allows the public to come in and talk to us if they have opinions on where that money should go. But previously, the Assembly had set up that Fisheries Economic Development Fund, so this type of money could be used for something fisheries related in the future.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Assembly discussion. Yep. Straightforward. Thank you. The next ordinance is similar. Ordinance number FY 2026-14, accepting and appropriating funds from the 2021 Chignik Salmon Federal Fishery Disaster Relief Distribution. Staff report, Madam Manager.
Thank you. Everything I said just previously, except this one is for the 21 Chignik salmon disaster. We received notification from the Pacific States Marine Fisheries that we're eligible for a one-time payment of $41,557.81. And again, that would be an increase to our Fisheries Economic Development Fund.
Thank you. Assembly discussion? Nope. Okay, moving on to contract review. Contract number FY 2026-25, landfill scale shake platform project with CCI Industrial Services LLC. Staff report, Madam Manager.
Thank you. The existing platform structure at the landfill is constructed of wood and has raised several safety concerns. The current design makes it difficult for staff to inspect loads arriving and drivers to exit their vehicles safely while on the scale. In order to fix this, we presented designs to the Architectural Review Board on July 23rd of this year. Due to the long lead time of materials for the project, if we're going to do it, would take place over summer 2026. We were trying to get this bid early. Our project manager, Cody Allen, is here tonight to answer specific questions about the project that you might have.
Thank you. Assembly discussion? Mr. Gardner.
I just have a massive problem with this one. Getting close to $250,000. I think there was 5 stairs in the plans there. It's a very small area. Something screams that there is something wrong with this bid to me. And right after, agreeing to do a $103,000 set of stairs down the cliff at Mill Bay, this is nothing in that scale of construction. And I don't think it's that bad when I go to the dump and drop stuff off. So I for the life of me, cannot understand why it was $214,000. I talked to a friend of mine that owns a construction company, and he had asked me about the engineer's estimate. And Cody, I didn't see that anywhere in the exhaustively long document that I read. Was there ever an engineer's estimate in terms of cost on this?
We have been instructed not to do engineer's estimates, as it's creates a bit of a conflict during the bidding process. But I'd like to clarify, it's not just stairs, it's the entire platform that goes around the scale.
Thank you. Ms. Roberts?
I feel like we're back in the Mill Bay stairs discussion, very similar. And in that, we did ask, what is the cost to replace the wood structure that's already there? I'm also curious, how old is the current structure that is there?
The current structure's aged with the existing building that was there. The cost to replace it in wood would be a bit of a moot point because it's a complete change. We're not just replacing in kind, like for like. It's an expansion to allow for safety and access. And so the current structure is approximately like 12 feet long. This is a full length structure that goes down the side of the scale shack.
I just had one question. So thinking about what would be if we did not take action on this and fund this project, what would be the risk to our employees at the landfill and the community when they enter and use the landfill?
So the risk was identified. I guess it sounds like the question that's really being asked is how we got here, kind of, or why we're here. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
No more. If we don't make these, if we don't approve this contract and make this expansion and repairs, what are the safety risks to the employees and the public who use the landfill?
So essentially, it would be status quo, using what's existing there. The reason it's a safety issue is like when you get out of the vehicle, especially the trucks come both ways, coming and going. So if you get out of the vehicle coming into the landfill, as you turn right, you're stepping on a bull rail and then stepping onto the platform to go into the scale shack. If you come out of the landfill going right to left, you're stepping out of the truck onto nothing, and kind of shimmying down the bull rail and then going inside. It's a safety issue for the contractors. The trash contractor comes in the wee hours of the morning before staff is there. They do their own weights and they get their tickets. And so there's no one there if somebody falls, slip trips or falls. It's an issue for elderly and people that come in to dispose of trash and waste. And then staff, of course, have to transit up onto the scale, down the scale, back off the scale to get into the scale shack.
Thank you. That was going to be my follow-up is if, thinking about the seniors and elders in our communities, if, this is if we don't do anything, this is going to limit their ability to visit and use the landfill safely, or are there any, I'm very ignorant here in that, are there ADA requirements that aren't being met?
So we actually investigated if that was an issue, like the ADA compliance component, and it's not, for the sake of we're encouraging the elderly and people not to exit the vehicle. It's the contractors that are coming in and out of their vehicles mostly, because it is such a big issue and safety concern. But the 214 that you see before you tonight is for the base bid, which is the 125 for the existing scale on the left-hand side, if you think about the scale shack side, and then the other side of the platform was an alternate that would accommodate those folks that do come and go so they could get in and out of their vehicle and interact with the scale shack.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gardner.
I go to the dump somewhat regularly. In my opinion, there's absolutely no reason for the average bear to ever have to get out of their vehicle on the scale. The only people that would need to get out of their vehicle are trash contractors. When I go use the scale, guy steps right out of the office, talks to me right at my window, asks me what I got, checks the back, goes back in, and I take off. If the concern is getting out on the other side when you're turning around, I think you can just drive around and go back up the other way. And again, you're right there for the scale. This just seems like throwing a bunch of money at a problem that doesn't really exist in my eyes. I've never seen any dump employee struggling on the existing platform in front of the shack. And you roll up right there, your window's right here, they step out right there. I can't understand this number at all. It's crazy to me.
Mr. Johnson.
Thanks. I think this proposal suffers from a lack of knowledge up here, and I think that's understandable with everything in the borough that happens. It's hard to digest a large price tag on something like this without a clear understanding of the operational need. I would be in favor of deferring this decision if we could get the Solid Waste Advisory Board to take a look and provide a recommendation. That's my suggestion. I think that's an underutilized group. If it sounds like we need to recruit for a Solid Waste Advisory Board, but yeah, I just, if we have these advisory boards, and yes, that one is not currently having a quorum, but those groups exist to help the assembly with these types of decisions. And absent that, I share the concern. I'm not a contractor. I don't use it as a contractor, so I don't see a need for it, but that doesn't mean there isn't one. I'd like to suggest getting a little more insight into the problem that's being solved.
I just wanted to make a comment, just so everyone's aware. These all go through the ARB, our version of that review before it's even deemed like a need or a want, desire. It goes to the ARB and they direct kind of the requirements of that. That's how we got here.
Protection in the amount of $169,292. Staff report, Madam Manager.
At the most recent Borough and School District Maintenance meeting, the Borough was notified that the Port Lions School fire alarm panel is malfunctioning, creating a significant concern for both students and staff. The panel has been triggering false fire alerts multiple times a day. I think it was 7 in one day when they reported it to us, which is disrupting instruction and potentially desensitizing occupants to actual emergency warnings. The school district has offered to contribute up to $50,000 to help move this project forward. I directed staff to issue an emergency request for proposals to replace the Port Lions School fire alarm panel, conduct an on-site verification of existing devices, ensure all components are compatible with the new panel, and prepare the necessary documentation for the upgrade. Staff used the issued an RFP on November 21st and distributed it to qualified Alaskan fire protection agencies. Due to the urgency of the life safety issue, a shortened proposal period was established and submissions were due on November 26th. 2 proposals were received. Staff contacted both contractors for some clarifications, which is allowed per KIBC code 3.30.050. Both contractors submitted updated proposals with the clarifications included. Based on the review of the updated proposal, staff determined that Taylor Fire was the lowest cost responsible bidder. Again, our project manager, Cody Allen, is here tonight to answer questions. And I will also add that we also looped in Chief Ellis from Bayside, being the off-road system fire marshal, to review our plans to make sure that we are compliant with everything that he could see, and he approved as well.
Thank you. Assembly discussion? Mr. Gardner.
Another high number to me, but now here's like a situation where, it's the school, so I can get behind this. I know these are very, very complicated, so I don't really have any questions. Just wanted to voice my support initially.
Mr. Smiley?
Me too.
Mr. Woods, just checking in. I'm not looking up at the screen as often as I told you I would.
Camera's not functioning. I'm still here, but I would also tend to be in support of this.
Thank you. I agree. We can't have something that disruptive, and more importantly, if it were to malfunction when it was needed, that could put people's lives at risk. So, and I trust our management staff, project management staff, and certainly trust Chief Ellis's judgment on this one. I will be supporting it. Any further discussion? Okay. So the next contract for review is contract number FY 2026-43, Borough Building Automation Services Agreement with Long Building Technologies. Staff report, Madam Manager.
Thank you. The Kodiak Island Borough building depends on Long Building Technologies for its building automation system. The software license for this system expires in April of 26, and you'll see in the next item we are looking to renew the Long Technologies contract for KFRC as well. So we are going to try to renew both licenses at the same time so they can follow the same contract schedule. Tonight, there are many options for us to look at. Our project manager, Cody Allen, is here to kind of walk us through what those options are and what the cost impact would be over the next 5 years.
Thank you. Assembly discussion? Mr. Gardner?
Over the past 7 years, we've spent less than $20,000 with long automation for various troubleshooting and whatnot. I think that their program for maintenance is cute, but it looks like a extended warranty ploy to me, and I'm in favor of the cheapest option on both buildings, licensing only.
Further discussion? Okay, thank you, Mr. Allen. So moving on to the next contract for review, contract number FY 2026-44, Kodiak Fisheries Research Center, Long Building Technologies, Building Automation Service Agreement. Madam Manager.
Thank you. This is very similar. Over the past year, we've experienced monitoring issues that affects the tenants at KFRC. Over Christmas last year, we had a saltwater system loss that resulted in NOAA losing one of their experiments. To maintain system functionality, the borough has to renew the software license. Again, there are several options that Long has given us. And I think that the issue with this system is going to be those pumps that are coming in. We have 5 new pumps that we ordered that have shipped and are on their way here. And so Long, I'm sorry, I can't stop thinking about Mr. Gardner's, your car warranty has expired, and that's, you can ask Mr. Allen, that's what I said when I read this too. I was like, whoa, what do you think we need? And so I asked them to dig into this and get their opinion on what they thought our costs were going to be, because we have to calibrate new systems at KFRC. I will also say that NOAA pays 76% of the costs for this kind of stuff in that building. And so I'm hoping we'll have a little bit longer discussion on this building, because there's, through that GSA contract, we have a lot more writing on that tenant than we do with our automation here in the Borough building. I'm not sure, Cody, is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I just want to clarify, I guess, it's not, so when you think in the $20,000, I generally don't share opinions, so this is a first for me, so I apologize in advance. Historically, we did not pay for the licensing, and so we were kind of just not updating our iPhone, so to speak. And so that also led to a lot of other costs that we do not have a way to quantify, because we had things that were happening that we did not know. And in such a way, now you have $500,000 in pumps coming to Kodiak and a winter project. And so I love my job, I like what I do, but unnecessary projects aren't a fun part of my job. And so when you look at the cost for those maintenance agreements, you're looking at a fee for somebody to sit there and watch and tell you when something goes wrong and let you know. And so with a maintenance staff that I'm currently helping oversee of 3 people, only one of which that works at KFRC, and we just replaced today in the lovely weather 2 lift station pumps that were just replaced over about 12 months ago. That also could be monitored by something. It's extremely helpful when you're running a lean team to have another set of eyes or a computer software system that says, hey, you have a problem here. Think of it as, instead of a warranty, think of it as a check engine light for your vehicle. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. I agree with the complexity of the systems in that facility and the amount of pumps and lift stations and projects that are happening. And then, I don't think it's an apples to apples comparison compared to the building we're sitting in now. Lights go out here. We don't lose millions of dollars in research projects that our harvesters are relying on. There's a lot at stake there in that facility, and it's very complex. So I do support some level of assistance to echo Mr. Allen. They're very short staffed there, so I think having some level of support would be a good idea. Mr. Smiley.
There are all kinds of different options here, remote only, full service, et cetera. I think for the starting year, I think you ought to go full service on this. The complexity in that building is unreal, and I think you're going to need to monitor everything, or at least have them look at it the first time and get a good feeling for it. I think they're reputable people. They have a good reputation, so let's have them do it for 1 year on full service, and then we can decide what to do after that.
Mr. Gardner.
Yeah, I changed my position on this one. I didn't realize that these guys were monitoring all the scientific equipment. My wife is a biologist in the NOAA building. I'm intimately aware with all the issues that happen over there. And yes, some level of support here would be a good idea because there are a lot of issues, and especially if NOAA is going to pick up 3/4 of the tab, then absolutely. That building is very complicated. So yeah, I rescind my earlier statement on that one.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts.
Just going off of Assemblymember Smiley, trying out the full service for 1 year, Cody, this might be a question for you. Are we able to do that? I see 5-year term in here. Are we able to pick that out to 1 year?
Yes, so I emailed, let me see, an annual cost will be $31,281 for the Kodiak Fisheries Research Center. And another key thing, if I can, with the pumps comes new monitoring, but we also identified in all locations a need for replacements of sensors and things, and that's a key part of this, is when you're paying for that premium service, that's a part of that service, is the replacements of those critical, I call them bits and bobs, Amy laughs at me, but the things that are over complex that I'm not familiar with, that the scientists use, they take care of that as part of that service.
Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Oh, sorry, Mr. Woods.
I would just like to indicate my support for the full service option. Once upon a time, I was actually an intern in that building. One of the things I did was assist with those different experiments and the monitoring. There is a tremendous amount of logistics that go into most of those experiments, some of which span several years. If somebody else is picking up a bigger chunk of the bill, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't facilitate a good tenant.
Thank you. Further discussion? Mr. Johnson.
Thanks. I don't know that the original question was answered. Is there an option to do the full service package for a year and then look at other options down the road?
I think we'll have to call and ask them tomorrow.
We asked. It's 31,000. It's an annual. It's 31,281.
But we're not locked in for 5 years.
No,
or they're just guaranteeing that price for 5 years.
That is essentially you receive 2 on-site visits, 2 remote visits, and 2 analytical reviews for an annual term at the 31,000. I don't think you're locked in for 5 years. I think that's your annual price. They're giving you a discount over the course of 5 years, but we can negotiate it back and forth however we're directed to.
Great. All right, so we will move on to the ordinance for introduction. Ordinance number FY 2026-16, amending Kodiak Island Borough Code, Chapter 5.01 regarding liquor licenses to clarify the methods and basis for borough protests for issuance of a new license, renewal of an existing license, transfer of an existing license, and review of the continued operation of a license. Staff report, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Assembly members. In 2022, the Alaska Legislature enacted a bill revising and modernizing Alaska's alcohol beverage laws. And the new regulations became effective January 1 of 2024. We have been working on the changes to this code for at least a year with the attorney. And it's finally before you. We're very excited that we're finally modernizing an extremely outdated code. So a lot of work was put into this, so we're excited. It's before you. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Assembly discussion? Yep. Thank you, Noah, for all the hard work. You have my support, that's for sure. This has been a
Thank
long
you.
time coming.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to other items. We're getting close here. Confirmation of mayoral and assembly appointments to the different boards, committees, and commissions. Madam Clerk.
Yes, these are the annual appointments to the different boards and committees. We advertised for the seats, and we have given, I believe it's November 15 as the deadline, and the mayor, before you, presents his appointments. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? Okay. So next is the confirmation of assembly appointment to the Women's Bay Service Area Board of Mr. Blake Strain.
So for service areas, they are assembly appointments, so these are not mayoral appointments. And we do have a process when it comes to appointments to the different service area boards. What we do is that when we receive an application, we forward it to the board, they discuss it, and then they make a recommendation to the assembly. And we have done that with this particular seat. The Women's Bay Service Area would like you to confirm their recommendation of Mr. Blake Strain to the Women's Bay Service Area Board for a term to expire October 2028. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right. Next is declaring a city seat vacant on the Planning and Zoning Commission for Mr. Nick Mangini. Staff report, Madam Manager, or Clerk, excuse me.
Thank you. Mr. Mangini was appointed to a city council seat, and he has tendered his resignation effective December 17, 2025. And we just need to vacate it so we can advertise the seat. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, we have declaring a seat vacant on the Architectural and Engineering Review Board for Mr. Victor Weaver.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Weaver has accepted a position in the engineering department.
He certainly did, but then he rescinded that acceptance and he'll be moving off island. So either way, we'll need to vacate the seat.
Okay, well, we'll update the agenda summary and we'll vacate the seat next week. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So moving on to manager's comments.
I do not have any comments tonight, but we'll do a full manager's report on Thursday night.
Thank you. Okay, clerk's comments. Madam Clerk.
I will keep it short. It has been a busy week last week, attending conferences and stuff like that. And my team and I would like to extend our deep appreciation to the Assembly for allowing us to attend the conference. We had a very productive conference. There was an advanced academy that focused on ethics in action, which I think not just for the assembly or the elected officials, but I think it's important for us as clerks also to learn about ethics and make sure that we practice that in the office. There were a lot of sessions that I felt very beneficial to the clerk. We had roundtable discussions and actual experiences of clerks. We have learned a lot about records. I've been doing this for the past 24 years, but there's always something that I take back when I attend these conferences. So you'll probably see a few code revisions in the near future, records code-wise. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for Nova? Okay, moving on to Assembly member comments. Mr. Woods.
Thank you all for putting up with my technical difficulties tonight. I have no further comments other than just glad to be here.
Thank you. Ms. Roberts.
I just appreciate the discussions we're having. I make notes coming into these meetings, and by the time everyone's spoken, I'm raising my hand, all the notes have been talked about. So I appreciate hearing everyone's opinions and thoughts.
Thank you. Mr. Smiley.
I won't be here on Thursday. I'm leaving at 7 a.m., provided that the plane comes in the night before. And I won't be back until after Christmas, so I want to wish everyone a happy Christmas. Have a good time. Be with your families if you can.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Yeah, echoing that, I appreciate the robust discussion tonight. I always enjoy and appreciate the other perspectives on these things. We don't always agree, and nor should we. Groupthink is dangerous, as you're refusing to compromise. So, yeah, I appreciate that. I want to thank staff for all the work that went into tonight's presentations and packages. And I think some of the questions, the hard questions that were asked, is very reflective of our failure as a body to provide staff with a strategic plan that they can reference when trying to determine priorities. It's pretty hard to navigate without a map. And I think we, as a body, owe that map, that strategic plan, to staff so they can understand the priorities of this body and work to accomplish them. Otherwise, it's either putting out fires or finding pet peeves or pet projects, and I don't think that makes for good governance. So I would just like to suggest that we prioritize getting a strategic plan done sooner than later. Thank you.
Mr. Gardner.
Yeah, echoing sentiment. It's a pleasure working with you guys. It's nice. It's a good group. And then I want to take a second and thank the three wonderful women in here, Amy, Seema, and Nova. I ask them questions all the time, and they exhaustively are always returning to me with so much information, and I know how much work it takes, so I really do appreciate you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, the folks we work with couldn't be any better as far as keeping us informed and helping us along the way. I really appreciate our discussion tonight. I always welcome folks to challenge my perspective. I think that's how I learn a lot. So I really like when folks do that. It makes me think about things in a different way. And sometimes I gain a totally different perspective. So I appreciate that. I encourage folks to continue to challenge status quo. If we're going to grow as a community and bounce back and turn this downward trajectory, hopefully at least flatten that trajectory, we're going to have to come up with some creative solutions and do some things that are going to create a little bit of discomfort. But I don't know exactly how the saying goes. I'm probably going to butcher it, but with discomfort comes growth, something along that. You got to break a bone to grow a bag, something like that. Anyhow. Happy holidays. I hope everyone has time to spend with people they care about. Be safe out there. Don't drink and drive. The roads are a little sketchy. Thank you to the community who comes out and speaks with us and lets us know what their thoughts are. I highly appreciate that. I think we're seeing more of that. I encourage folks to come out, call us, email us, whatever you need to do to let us know what your thoughts are. I certainly learn from the community every week, so thank you very much for doing that. And that being said, we will adjourn at 9. Oh my goodness. Oh, we are work session. We don't have public comment at the end. That is, during the regular meetings, we have public comment at the beginning and the end of the meeting. All right, so with that, I will adjourn the work session at 9:37 p.m.
Good night, Jeff.
8:37.
Night, gang.
Judy, would you show me